Hello, it's time to start Genesis. So here we go. One of the first things that we see in Genesis is that God is. I think you studied this in sophomore theology, but it's important. It's worth mentioning again now. God is. In other words, God isn't created, God isn't something that comes to be, and God is not a being among other beings. God is He who is. God is being itself, you could say. God is beyond the sphere of created things. Now, to talk about this, I want to go back to the question um, that we talked about before. If God is all powerful, then is he able to create a rock so heavy that he cannot lift it? Now, this question, in a way, is a silly question, but it has some um, it has some force to it to make us be precise about what we mean, and I think that that's important that we pay attention to those benefits. Now, if someone were to raise this question, they're trying to put other people into a bind. They're trying to say, well, either God is uh, able to both create a rock so heavy he can't lift and lift it. If he can't do both, then therefore God is not all powerful. It's trying to kind of put you in a bind. However, one way of expressing the problem with this is the claim that God is all powerful means that God is able to do all things. In other words, he could make all possible existing things. Contradictions are not things. So a square circle can be said in words, but there's no reason when I say God is all powerful, can do all things, there's no reason to say God can make a square circle because a square circle is just by definition, or you could say by non-definition, not a thing. By the meaning of both of those words, they're not the same. It's a contradiction to posit that. It's something we can say in words, but that cannot exist. Well, in the same way, God can make a rock of any size whatsoever, and God can always move that rock or have that rock be wherever He wishes it to be. But to set it up to where can God make a rock so heavy that one who can lift anything can't lift it, that's a contradiction. And there's no claim in saying that God is all powerful that he can do contradiction, simply that he can do all things. He can make a rock of any size whatsoever and have it be wherever he would like it to be. Okay, that's one way to look at it. But I think the way that's going to be more illuminating and more helpful in our understanding of what it means to say that God is to answer this question, the question about the rock that's so heavy that God can't lift it, with the analogy of an author. You could ask the same thing. Can an author make in their story a rock so heavy that the author could not edit the story and put the rock somewhere else? Because you see, that's more like the position that God has to the world. Just as the author, without any lifting at all, just simply writing or typing, or even just composing in their mind, just as the author is able to make in their story a rock of any size whatsoever. It could be as large as I don't know, as the entire universe. They can make a rock and they can put it in their story wherever they want, because they're an author. They're outside of the story. They're making something within this other sphere. Well, in the same way, to say, can God lift something is a kind of absurdity. He's not within the story needing to lift things or not lift things. God is outside of the story as the author of all that exists. And as the author, he is able to make whatever he wishes within that context. But he's always able to move it, he's always able to have it be where he wishes, because just like the author of the story, he always has authority over his own work, over this thing that he makes. He's authored it into being. And so angels, human beings, dogs, fish, rocks, atoms, quarks, even platypuses, they all owe their existence to God entirely and completely. and he's holding them in being at any moment. So could he have them be anywhere he wishes? Yes. Could he have them be as big as he wants? Yes. No problem. He's the author. He's not a being floating on a cloud somewhere within the context of the universe. God is. Okay, now there is a way in which creation is different than the book. Once an author writes a book, that book has independent existence apart from the author. It could be put out, the author could even later on regret that they had written it or something like that, but there it is, it's out there. In the case of God and creation, it is different. Creation depends on God to exist at every moment. God did not create sometime in the past and then just kind of like let everything unwind itself like clockwork. No, God is constantly creating all that exists. He's holding it in being at every moment. It's like a marker. If I take a marker, it's held up as long as my hand is holding it up. I can have my hand there holding the marker, there it sits. But as soon as I pull my hand away, the marker falls. Well, in the same, and disappears. Oh, there it is. So this marker is like creation. God is like the hand. The existence of all creation depends at every moment on God holding it in being, or it would not be. He is the source constantly and continually of all being. And that's why everything that exists depends entirely on God. That's what we see in this story of creation. God calls all of these things out of nothingness, out of non-being, into being, and he orders them in a way that is fitting. Okay, so creation depends entirely on God for its existence at every moment, and our creation is ordered. If you look at this table, you can see this is kind of an expression of the first 6 days. Now, people have talked about this as days of forming and days of filling. The first 3 days are days of forming. God's kind of setting the stage that then the actors are going to come into to be within. So the setting of the stage in the first day, light and dark are separated off from one another. In the second day, the sea, all the waters, and the sky are separated from one another. So you see, we have this kind of successive dividing, light and darkness divided, then sea and sky dividing, and then land, dry land, is divided off from the sea. So you have the water and the dry land divided. In an image, it looks like this. See the dry land and the light separated, the sky and the sea, and then the sea and the dry land. Now then, what you have in days 4 through 6 is the filling of each of these spaces. So in day 4, the light and the darkness, the kind of places that were made, are filled with, the darkness is filled with the stars and the moon, and then the light is filled with the sun. Then on the 5th day, you have the sky filled with the birds of the air, and the sea, the water, filled with the fishes. Then finally, on the 6th day, on the land, you have that filled with the land animals, and then finally with human beings. So that it's like all of the players, all of the actors, coming out on this stage that has been set up by God. Now you might say, that doesn't seem to fit the complexity of the way that the world is. And surely that's true, but I don't think that's what it's trying to do. What it's trying to indicate is that there is an order to things. From the biggest macroscopic level down to the tiniest, most microscopic level, there is an order in all things. And that, surely, modern science, modern physics in a particular way, supports. There is an order to things and a way that they fit together, even in the midst of the almost unbelievable diversity of things. And these first 6 days are expressing that God has ordered things. Now, most things act according to their nature simply. A rock moves towards the center of the Earth if I try to drop it. If it was out near Mars, it would move towards the center of Mars. Birds act according to their instinct, the instinct that's developed in them over all the many uh, millennia of their development. All of these birds act according to the instincts that they have. Human beings are free. And human beings alone, among everything else that we know, or anything else that we found so far at least, other than angels, are able to act freely, are able to act against the order that God has made or in harmony with it. And that becomes a choice that we make. Do we live in harmony with the order of the way that God has made things, of the way that God has made us, which is the path of flourishing and joy? Or do we act in discord to it and in that way bring about chaos and lessen what we are, lessen the image of God in ourselves? That becomes the question for human beings who are free. Okay, so here in creation, one, God is the author of all things. God is outside of creation, holding it in being. It depends entirely on Him, as a book depends on its author, but even more so because it's held in being at every moment. Creation is ordered in a particular way, in this beautiful, powerful way. Um, and human beings, alone of all the physical beings that we experience, have freedom by which we can act contrary to the order or in harmony with it. And that is where going to be the origin of moral evil, as we'll see in the next video, in the videos coming up. So, God bless you. Have a good rest of your day.